Now from Washington, Larry King.
Good evening. We need to tell you off the top about some ground rules that have been agreed to by the Vice President, Mr. Perot, and CNN. We have no studio audience here. Neither the Vice President nor Mr. Perot have any staffers in the studio, nor may they talk with any assistants during the telecast. No representatives of either side are in the control room while we are on the air. Our guests may use notes, visual aids if they wish. We have no debate clock. This is no formal statement and rebuttal format. There's no time limit on questions or answers. The program will go 90 minutes. To be fair about deciding who got to sit where, we tossed a coin earlier today. Vice President is 202-408-1666. Overseas, 202-408-4821. 202-408-4821. We'll give you those numbers again later. We'll start with the Vice President. We're going to wing back and forth and then include your phone calls. When President Bush signed this in San Antonio, he was on our show, and then a few nights later I was with you and the then governor, now president-elect. My memory for it. I want to see the side agreements. I want to hear what the unions object to, and then I'll come back and sort of let you know. But it was not a definitive yes. What changed?
Well, we negotiated two side agreements that protect labor and protect the environment. And not until the two side agreements were completed did we agree to support NAFTA. Now, this is a good deal for our country, Larry, and let me explain why.
But you were hedging early.
Well, we said from the very beginning of the basic arrangement, which we did with the side agreements. And the reason why this is so important can be illustrated by the story of a good friend of mine that I grew up with named Gordon Thompson, who lives in Elmwood, Tennessee, with his wife Sue and his son Randy. He makes tires for a living. He's a member of the United Rubber Workers, and he's for this because he's taken the time to look at how it affects his job and his family. We make the best tires in the world, but we have a hard time selling them in Mexico because they have a 20% tax collected at the border on all of the tires that we try to sell. Now, when they make tires and sell them into the United States, the tax at the border is zero. So it's a one-way street. NAFTA changes that. It makes it even Steven.
So he'll make more tires.
They'll make more tires. They'll be able to sell more tires. His son will have a better chance of going into that line of work if that's what he should decide he wants to do. And remember this, I mean, people think, well, they don't buy tires. Mexico bought 750,000 new cars last year. The big three sold them only 1,000 because they have the same barriers against our cars. Those barriers will be eliminated by NAFTA. We'll sell 60,000, not 1,000 in the first year after NAFTA. Every one of those cars has 4 new tires and 1 spare. We'll create more jobs with NAFTA.
Weren't you a free trader always, Will?
I am a free trader now.
Do you favor some sort of NAFTA?
Absolutely.
And what's your rub?
The problem is, this is not good for the people of either country. Yes. I think the important thing for everybody watching this show tonight to remember, this is not an athletic contest. This is not a question of who wins, whether I win or the Vice President wins. This is a question of the people of the United States and the people of Mexico win. Now, that's the important issue, and I'm sure we're in agreement on that. My concern is very simple. I look at many years' experience in the Maquiladora program, and here is what I see. We have a lot of experience in Mexico. I've been accused of looking in the rearview mirror. That's right. I'm looking back at reality. And here is what I see after many years. Mexican workers' life, standard of living, and pay has gone down, not up. After many years of having U.S. companies in Mexico, this is the way Mexican workers live all around big new U.S. plants. Now, just think if you owned a big U.S. company and you went down to see your new plant and you found slums all around it, your first reaction would be, why did you build a plant in the middle of slums? And manager would say, oh, there were no slums. This would be a NAFTA that gives the people... Now, what are the rules here? I answer his questions or yours?
Well, mine or both. With this is
okay, but
freewheeling.
the point being... There it is. Here it is on a more personal basis. Mexicans working, and here's one just to look at. Now, here's a good, decent man working his heart out, making his cardboard shack, and the cardboard came from boxes that were used to ship the goods down
Can I say something about this?
This, I didn't interrupt you.
Okay, now, guys.
Then maybe it just...
Now, your concept would have been what, Ross? If this was a
All
bad
I'm saying
deal, what would
is if after 10 active years, this has been in effect since the 60s, but let's say 10 active years, you would think the standard of living of the Mexican worker would begin to come up. Instead, it continues to go down by design. 36 families own over half the country. So 85 million people work for them in poverty. U.S. companies, because it is so difficult to do business in this country, can't wait to get out of this country and go somewhere else, and, if possible, get labor that costs 1/7 of what it costs in the United States.
How would you change it? How would you change it?
Very simply, I would go back and study. First, we look at this. It doesn't work.
Well, what specific changes would you make in it?
I can't, unless you let me finish, I can't answer your question. Now, you asked me, and I'm trying to tell you.
All right. Well, you brought your charts tonight, so I want to know what specific change.
against it, let them respond.
How can I answer if you keep interrupting?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. First, study the things that work. The European community has had a similar experience. They got the same Portuguese countries like that where the wages were different. People didn't have rights, so on and so forth. And they made them come to the economic scale. In 1904, Theodore Roosevelt wrote a beautiful, simple statement. And basically said something very similar to what Congressman Gephardt recently said. He said, under no circumstances can we lower the standard of living of the working American. Therefore, any trade agreement we enter into must require, if I would say, that makes it an even playing field, then gives Mexico an incentive to raise the standard of living of its people, which it does not have now.
Okay, can I
Lower
respond
the
now?
standard of living of its
Okay.
people.
Now, so your basic response is you would change it by raising tariffs
I just started, but you interrupted.
on
That's the
Mexico.
first thing I would do.
One by one.
It's the
Right.
first thing I would do.
Okay. Now, I've heard Mr. Perot say in the past that, as the carpenter says, measure twice and cut once. We've measured twice on this. We have had a test of our theory, and we've had a test of his theory. Over the last 5 years, Mexico's tariffs have begun to come down because they've made a unilateral decision to bring them down some. And as a result, there has been a surge of exports from the United States into Mexico, creating an additional 400,000 jobs, and we can create hundreds of thousands of more if we continue this trend. We know this works. If it doesn't work, you know, we give 6 months notice and we're out of it. But we've also had a test of his theory.
When?
In 1930, when the proposal by Mr. Smoot and Mr. Hawley was to raise tariffs across the board to protect our workers. And I brought some pictures too. You brought some pictures?
Protectionist?
This is a picture of Mr. Smoot and Mr. Hawley. They look like pretty good fellows. They sounded reasonable at the time. A lot of people believed them. The Congress passed the Smoot-Hawley Protection Bill. He wants to raise tariffs on Mexico. They raised tariffs, and it was one of the principal causes, many economists say the principal cause, of the Great Depression in this country and around the world. Now, I framed this so you can put it on your wall if you want to.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Would raising tariffs produce another...
We're talking two totally different, unrelated situations. Now, you do need to measure twice and cut once, but then if you have a program that is failing, you should not institutionalize it. See, the Mexican program has failed. It's failed the people of Mexico. It's failed the people of the they give of exports from the United States are not realistic numbers. For example, they count in the government figures automobile parts going into Mexico, made by U.S. car companies in Mexico, United States to be sold as if Mexican consumers bought those parts. That didn't happen. Then if you take let's just say you have a piece of glass crystal that you spend $100 making it in this country. You're going to send it to Mexico to have $10 of additional work done to it. They count it as a $100 export. Then they count it as $100 to come into Mexico from the U.S. Then they count it as $110 import back in the United States. Now then, when you look at how they count, the real export figures to Mexican consumers are tiny. The used factory equipment coming from U.S. factories going into Mexico, new factories going to Mexico.
Are not bought?
No. It's a Zenith moves equipment from the U.S. into Mexico. That's used equipment. Then we count that as if Mexican consumers bought it. Nobody bought anything. Old equipment just came to Mexico.
Let me respond to that if I can, because unfortunately, there's a grain of truth to that, but it's so tiny that it doesn't quite rise to that level. There are a few things in that category, but the vast majority, 80 to 90%, are exports that stay in Mexico and are bought there. Here's what's happened to our trade surplus, and these figures are net figures. It takes into account everything that he's talking about in that small category. In 1987, before Mexico started lowering its taxes at the border, its tariffs, we had a $5.7 billion trade deficit with Mexico. 5 years, the goods we sell into Mexico, the volume has been growing twice as fast as the goods we sell in the United States. We had a $5.4 billion trade surplus. Trend continued for another 2 years, and NAFTA will, by removing those barriers, greatly accelerate it. We will have a larger trade surplus with Mexico than with any country in the entire
Why
world.
are trade unions so opposed to it then?
Well, some of them...
I mean, if your friend who makes the tire, and he's a union member, is going to benefit from this, why is the unions aligned with Ross Perot? Why do we have this alignment of Ross Perot unions, Jesse Jackson, Pat Buchanan, and Ralph Nader?
Because some of them make the same mistake that, with all due respect, Mr. Perot makes. They confuse the bad trade deals in the past with this one, which is the first time we've been able to get one that's even Steven, with zero taxes on both sides. You know, I told you about my friend Gordon Thompson. The international president of his union opposes NAFTA. Gordon Thompson has taken the time to look at the facts, and he supports NAFTA. Let me tell you who else has taken the time. Every living former president of the United States in both parties, the two-termers and the one-termer. Every former living liberal, from Colin Powell to Tip O'Neill to Rush Limbaugh, Ross Perot Jr., the head of his business, Morton Meyerson, Orville Swindle, the head of United We Stand last time, and Ross Perot Sr. supported it until he started running for president and attempting to bring out the politics of fear.
Ross?
Will I be able to speak for a second or two from time to time?
You're on.
Because there's a lot of inaccuracies here. Let's go to the big picture. We skip the personal stuff. People who don't make anything can't buy anything. Let's start with that. We are 85% of the market. Canada is 11% of the buying power.
Of the total free market.
And Mexico is only 4%. People who don't make anything cannot buy anything. Never forget that. Now then, let's look at these exports. So here's Mexico, 4%, Canada, 11%, United States, 85%. We're the biggest buyer of goods and services in the world. Please remember that tonight. That's one of our aces. Now then, here's the real export story. You get down here, these are the phony exports down here. Here are the real exports here, about 7.7. You take this big number here, that's what you're really talking about. If you want to trade money, you don't trade with people who have any money. Now, it's true, now, a good deal will sell itself, folks, just plain talk. 4 former presidents came out for it and couldn't sell it. All the secretaries of state came out for it and couldn't sell it. We had satellite going across 200 auditoriums across the country. That didn't sell it. Got Lee Iacocca for it. That didn't sell it. $30 million coming out of Mexico, and that is rotten and that is wrong, and that didn't sell it. $35 million coming out of corporate America to try to get out of this country, go south of the border, and hire that cheap labor, and that didn't sell it.
Let me know.
This dog just didn't hunt. Now, today they don't have the votes in the House of Representatives. We're in the third quarter. They can get them because they're buying them big time with your tax money. We're working the halls night and day to make sure it doesn't happen. You can play a key role in it. But sure, they all tried to sell it to you, and the fact that they couldn't demonstrates that this deal is not good for our country.
Let me get a break, and then but it doesn't impress you that every former president supports
it? impresses me that they couldn't do it.
Oh, but
Well,
it doesn't impress you that they support it.
That they show, those are the guys that cut the worst trade deals in history. He's already talked about it.
It's not over
Wait
with.
just a minute now. They did the Japanese deals. They did the Chinese deals. God bless them. They cost you 2 million jobs. 2 million jobs.
They fooled Colin Powell?
He's a great soldier, doesn't know anything about business.
We'll have the Vice President respond with Vice President Gore and Ross Perot after this.
But he said...
Larry King Live is brought to you by ERA Real Estate. For all the answers you need about buying or selling a house, just ask ERA.
We're back on Larry King Live. We'll be going to your phone calls in about 15 minutes, and we're going to cover as much of this as possible. We're going to be getting to jobs and other aspects of it, but I want the Vice President to respond to Mr. Perot, who's made some charges here that this is being bought.
Well, all of them, there's been more money spent against the NAFTA than for it, for sure. You can just look at the commercials. Every dollar that has been spent lobbying for it has been publicly disclosed. That is not true on the other side, and I would like to suggest to Mr. Perot, well, I think it would be a good idea, seriously, if you would publicly disclose the finances of your organization lobbying against it. They have not released the money spent, the contributors, where it's coming from, how much of it is Mr. Perot's, where the rest of it is coming from. But there was another statement I wanted to respond to also, and that is that Mexico doesn't buy a lot of products, that they're too poor to buy a lot of products. There's a big misunderstanding in the minds of some people about that. They are buying a lot of products. In fact, they're our second largest customer for manufacturing goods. They will be one of the largest customers overall if the trends continue. They already are. 70% of everything that they buy from a foreign country comes from the United States because we're so close to them and because they prefer our product.
And this treaty would increase jobs here?
Oh, no question about it.
Because there was an announcement today that it would be minimal either way.
There have been 23 studies of the impact of NAFTA on jobs in the United States. 22 of them have shown that it will cause an increase in the United States. The one that didn't showed that there would be a decline in illegal immigration, and they counted all of the illegal immigrants as holding jobs, and when they were taken out of the picture, they said that was a decline. Everybody else says it increases jobs in the United States.
On those points.
Okay, government studies are kind of like weather forecasters before balloons even, and certainly before radar. Now let me give you three. Let me give you three. Now we're back down to common sense. Number one, you remember in the Tax and Budget Summit when they said, watch my lips, no new taxes. Then they gave you a big tax increase, and they told you if you would pay it, they would balance the budget, pay off the debt, and you'd live happily ever after. See, now then, the new president had to raise taxes again because that one didn't work, and you picked up the difference. Now let's go to Medicare. When Medicare was first conceived in 1965,
Are we talking about NAFTA or...
I'm talking about government forecasts. I don't interrupt.
No, but you talked about trickle-down economics, and we're proud that we did.
The Tax and Budget Summit occurred before he became president.
Yeah, you went on from that. So why don't we talk about NAFTA?
All I said was he had to raise taxes again. That's hardly a cheap shot.
Well, on the wealthy,
Okay,
my goodness.
Back to the point.
That's the campaign promise.
Let's try to stay on point. He says...
I agree. But
first, are you spending more money than the other side?
Larry, I would really like to finish. I don't interrupt him, and if I could finish.
Okay.
Let me give these two examples. We talked about the inability to forecast the debt, right? And the fact that you have to keep paying more taxes. Then when Medicare came along in 1965, they said it would cost us $9 billion and $9 billion. Then when Medicaid came along, they said it would cost $1 billion in 1990. It cost $76 billion in 1990.
Meaning that you don't trust any government forecast?
I'm saying they basically come out with phony numbers. He's talking about these exports.
You're saying that the forecasts on hold, the forecasts on NAFTA are phony?
Yes. Then, let's take the next one. We say that we're spending more money against NAFTA than they're spending for it. That is not even close to true. It is how much Mexico has spent. It is a matter of record how much USA NAFTA has spent. You take
a tiny how much you all spent. Can that be a matter of public record? Can you release those numbers?
I really would appreciate being able to speak.
All right. Well, it was a question.
I really would.
It's a fair question,
excuse me.
I raised it earlier.
It was my understanding tonight we'd have a format where you would ask the question.
Okay.
And I would be able, I am not able to finish.
But if he makes a statement here, I'm just trying to balance so that he answers yours and you answer his. Okay, go ahead.
I would like to finish a sentence.
Okay.
Just once before the program's over. Now, we are not able to buy time. If you are anti-NAFTA, you cannot buy time on the networks. We have had to go buy local station time. We cannot buy network time because the networks won't on how much you're spending. We didn't run paid supplements in the New York Times.
I'd like to respond to that, okay?
Well, let him finish. He's got one more
we
thing.
didn't.
Well,
and,
all right, go ahead. I do want to respond.
For the benefit of both of you, our time is equal. You both have spoken equally tonight in time. We're keeping time in control so that we're fair.
All right, and on the manufacturing goods, second largest manufacturing good, they send all this phony turnaround stuff and count it as though we sold it to people who don't make any money can't buy anything. When you look at the Mexican worker and you go to the Miami Herald and you look at the man who works for Zenith in Mexico and you compare him to his counterpart who works for Zenith in the United States, this poor man makes $8.50 a day. You know what his dream is? To someday have an outhouse. You know what his big dream is? To someday have running water. You know why these people are desperate for running water? Because pollution and environmental laws.
This is not without NAFTA.
Yeah, that's all happening now.
Excuse me, but this is the prelude to NAFTA. They have strong environmental laws that they don't enforce. Now, just one second.
Now,
let the Vice
me
President
respond. Okay. First of all, you will notice, and the audience will notice, that he does not want to publicly release how much money he's spending, how much money he's received from other sources to campaign against NAFTA. I would like to see those public releases. The other side has made it. Now, let me come to the point that he talked about accuracy of forecasts and numbers. I watched on this program, right here at this desk, when the war against Iraq was about to take place, and you told Larry King, this is a terrible mistake because it'll lead to the death of 40,000 American troops. You said you had talked to the person who had ordered the caskets. You were wrong about that. You said on Larry King, just before the election, that after Election Day, there would be 100 banks that would fail, costing the taxpayers $100 billion. You were wrong about that. Now, the politics of negativism and fear only go so far. You started out
I've got to take a break and I'll have Ross respond. We'll come right back on Larry King Live.
We'll have to fool with it, and I'll be happy to.
We'll come right back on Larry King Live. We've got a lot to go. Your calls, too. Don't go away. We've been around the fringes here. I want to get to jobs, but we'll have the Vice President finish his statement, then Mr. Pro respond, and then we'll get to some specifics and your phone call.
Well, you're getting to the key issue there, because Bill Clinton and I were elected to do something about what's happening to working men and women in this country.
Correct.
They've been losing their jobs. There has been unfair competition from foreign countries that don't let our products in, even though we buy their products. This will help to stop that. Some people want to stay with the status quo, just keep things the way they are. We want to open up these barriers. And let me give you a specific example. Valmont Electric Company in Danville, Illinois, less than a year ago, was trying to sell products into Mexico. They've got a 13% tax at the border. We have a zero tax coming the other way. They closed down in Danville, 400 jobs lost. They opened up in Mexico with 100 jobs down there, and now they ship their products duty-free back into the United States through the Alliance Airport, which is the free trade zone that Mr. Perot's company has set up for. It's kind of a private free trade zone outside of Dallas, and they take Valmont Electric products and distribute them through the United States duty-free. Now, if we passed NAFTA, that 13% tax that they have at their border, and companies like Valmont could stay here in the United States, sell their products in Mexico, and not have to go down there to get over the barrier.
Are you saying that Mr. Perot is personally benefiting by attacking NAFTA?
Set it up so that he will benefit financially either way. But if NAFTA passes, if NAFTA is defeated, this family business that has a free trade zone outside of Dallas will continue to distribute products coming from Mexico into the rest of the United States. What is the deal with the alliance?
I think I'll explain it, but what we see here tonight is why our country is $4 trillion in debt, going $1 billion in debt every working day. Nobody ever focuses on the real problems. Now, I'm going to try to say this as simply as I can. Alliance Airport is in Fort Worth, Texas, not in Mexico. Alliance Airport is owned by the city of Fort Worth, not my son. Can you shake your head on that?
No. The
Alliance Airport, check the FAA, is owned by the city of Fort Worth.
You don't have ownership of
the airport
of the Alliance Corridor Incorporated?
Please.
I'll let him finish.
Please. Let's have an unnatural event and try not to interrupt me. Now, my son owns land adjoining the airport. Now, the purpose of that land is to build factories and warehouses so that industrial goods can be moved by rail and by air. Just now, watch my lips. To be created in Texas. Texas is in the United States. The workers will be United States citizens. They will be paid U.S. wages. It is a job creator in the United States of America. And all of this other silly putty they throw up. For example, the free trade zone concept goes back to the 1930s. It is nothing new about the free trade zone concept. You have to apply to the U.S. government to get it, and if it didn't make sense, I guess they wouldn't have given it to him. But it is not aimed at doing business with Mexico. Mexico will be a tiny little part of this. Okay. The first concept by U.S. manufacturing companies cheap right after NAFTA passes that are labor intensive, that make good products, that have marginal profits. Close the factories in the U.S., move the factories to Mexico, take advantage of the cheap labor, run your profits through the roof, sell the company stock at a profit, go get another one.
That's what they do now. That's what they're doing right now.
Are they doing that now?
And they're using Alliance Corridor Incorporated in part to do it.
You're talking about something like a trickle of water coming over Niagara Falls as opposed to the gusher. You know it.
Now, you say it's your son's business,
do you guys ever do anything but propaganda?
Isn't it your business also?
Would you even know the truth if you saw it?
Oh yes.
I don't believe you would. You better let me finish. This is not crossfire, is it, Larry?
No.
May I finish?
And then I'd like to ask the question.
All right. I have tried to explain with countless interruptions that this creates jobs in the United States. I am extremely proud of answer the question asked. I own a minority interest in the airport. Everything I'm doing makes it next to impossible for my family to ever do anything south of the border, and I could care less. Okay?
You do no business in Mexico.
I will put my country's interest in front of making money.
Let me know.
And I don't ever want to make money at the expense of other people. So, now, I got interrupted a minute ago when you shifted it back to...
One other thing...
No, I'd like to respond on this before we leave it.
The financing of the anti-NAFTA campaign. You had not been asked it, and he asked it.
Okay, fine. I'll answer it. See, again, he throws up propaganda. He throws up gorilla dust. It makes no sense.
What is it?
May I finish?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of the television time I bought during the campaign. That is a matter of public record. I've had 2 television shows since the campaign in the spring. They cost about $400,000 apiece. Those are network shows. Then we just did a NAFTA show, but we have to buy the time locally. I don't have the figures yet on what that cost me. I'd be glad to tell you.
You're spending.
I had to buy, no, I buy the television time because I don't want to take the members' money for that. They understand that. They approve of that. Okay?
So it's your money.
Well, it's not all his money, and we don't know.
No, the television
because they do
time,
not.
I just told you.
Well, but see, they do not release the records. But I accept your response because you have said that now.
If it makes you feel better to see the checks and the bills from the network,
it's okay for you to interrupt, but not me.
Okay, all right.
Now, hold on. You just said that you would. You just said that you would release the records, and I appreciate that. Now,
it has nothing to do with what's going to happen to our country.
Well, we need to know who's trying to influence it. Now,
I am paying for it. It's that simple.
Okay. We got the answer, guys.
Okay, now on this, the job, because right now we cannot surmount to sell into Mexico. We have been trying for years to get an even relationship so that their tariffs, their barriers, their taxes at the border will be eliminated. A lot of companies now have an incentive to leave the United States and locate down there. We heard about auto parts. Right now there is a 13% tax at the border collected by Mexico on U.S. auto parts. Wait a minute, let me finish. This is important, Larry. And there is less than 1/2% tariff the other way. That big growing market down there, in a few years they're going to be buying 1 million cars a year. In order to sell into that market, these companies now have an incentive to pull up stakes and move down there. This business, which is not just his son's business, and there's nothing dishonorable about it at all. But here is the brochure for it, and here is the prospectus, and here are the what look like the two principal investors there, Mr. Perot and the American Eagle. And in the prospectus it says that, okay, see it there?
Okay, now.
And in the prospectus it says that this is an ideal national distribution center for products coming out of Mexico. Plus, he has lobbied the taxpayers to spend more than $200 million in taxpayer funds in this project.
Who is
that
he?
Takes you and your business.
I'm not lobbied anybody.
There's nothing illegal about it.
I haven't done it. I haven't not lobbied anybody.
You've never hired a lobbyist?
In my life? You mean on the airport?
Both.
No, on the airport.
On the airport.
No, I don't hire lobbyists. This is my son's project. I went to the airport 18 months since.
What's the relevance?
Well, the relevance is that if the free trade, if the defeated, then this free trade zone that he has is still in business. If it's good enough for him, why isn't it good enough for the rest of the country?
He's doing this for personal profit?
I said before that I think that he to benefit either way. And he was in favor of NAFTA, again, wrote in favor of it in your book before you started running for president. You started getting a response from people.
Let's ask this fairly. What turned you against it if you were in favor of it?
Well, conceptually, I'm for free trade. I am, if we ever get back to the subject, for a good agreement with Mexico. I am deeply concerned about the 85 million people who live in poverty and don't have any rights. I am deeply concerned about workers who, when they go on strike, U.S. companies call in goons, bring in the state police, shoot several workers, kill one, injure dozens, put the workers back to work, and cut wages 45%. Those are things that are wrong. Right. I am not in favor of a one political party country. The PRI runs the country. President Salinas will pick his successor. President Salinas went to the 36 families who own over 54% of the gross domestic product and asked them for $25 million apiece. Fortunately, one of for their family, New York Times, and they didn't have to pay. That's Mexico. He will pick his successor. Read the State Department's annual report on human rights of journalists being killed, people in the opposing political parties being put in prison and killed and tortured. This is not a free society, and yet for some reason the same people who are willing to put our troops at risk around the world to make sure people are protected, once we get to Mexico, ignore all of it.
Are you saying that this supports a fascist kind of state?
I'm saying this is not, I'm concerned should give the Mexican people a decent life, and over a period of time should give them some purchasing power. If I'm going to do business with somebody, let's just say, if the U.S. is going to do business with another country, let's do business with a country whose people can buy things. Let's go to a big buyer.
President Salinas is a progressive?
President Salinas is almost out of office. I'm worried to death about who follows him.
Can I respond?
When you treat people the way they treat people, it's a matter of time until they lose power. Now, they've had it for a lot of years, and they keep it by force, but whether it's labor and management or countries and people, you oppress people long enough.
Let me respond to this. Because some of what he's saying here is true. Mexico is not yet a full democracy. They do not yet have full protection for human rights. They do not yet have the kind of standard and labor standards and environmental protection standards that we would like them to see. But they've been making tremendous progress, and the progress has been associated with this new relationship to the United States. The decisions in Mexico will ultimately be made by the people in Mexico. The question is whether or not we will have the ability to influence what they and their government decide. The best way to eliminate our influence down there is to defeat NAFTA. The best way to preserve it is to enter into this bargain, continue the lowering of the barriers. We've got a commitment that they're going to raise their minimum wage with productivity. We've got an agreement for the first time in history to use trade sanctions to compel the enforcement of their environmental standards. As they begin to develop and locate better jobs farther south, illegal immigration. Now, one of the reasons why the folks that I mentioned is because the kind of choice that every major proportions. Sometimes we do something right. The creation of NATO, the Louisiana Purchase, Thomas Jefferson did the right thing there. The purchase of Alaska, all extremely controversial, but they made a difference for our country. This is such, if we should happen to give in to the politics of fear and make the wrong choice, the consequences are catastrophic. If we make the we have a chance to encourage Mexico to continue on the path they have been traveling.
Ross is not saying he wants the status quo. Am I correct?
He wants to raise tariffs on Mexico.
Just a second. Let's look at reality as
and then we'll take our first call. Go ahead.
Let's look at reality instead of theory. There's a major U.S. that digs holes in the ground, dumps the chemical waste in those holes, bulldozes over those holes, and the water supply for the people in that area. Babies born in the shanty town around that plant are born without a brain. Now, I don't care if you're poor or rich. If your baby is born without a brain because a U.S. company is willing to take advantage of workers to that extent, that's wrong. Now, if there's any question about it, the xylene, the chemical xylene, water content in a ditch coming out of that plant is 53,000 times the amount permitted in the United States. Big Democratic group party. Here's the videotape that shows them digging the holes, putting the chemicals in the ground. It shows one child whose foot is horribly burned from chemicals, and it shows the classic worker abuse. I pass it on to the Vice President.
Yeah, thank you. I agree.
I know he cares. I'm not trying to.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
I know you care deeply about these things.
Yeah, can I answer?
I know you're a good man. But the laws are on the books. They're not enforced.
Yeah. NAFTA would what? Change them, not change them?
Well, they have this little side agreement, but the facts are Mexico is so sensitive about its sovereignty. They're not about to let us go down there and get into the middle of their... The Rio Grande River. All right, folks, Rio Grande River is the most polluted river in the Western Hemisphere. Tijuana River is the most polluted... They've had to close...
But all this is without NAFTA, right?
Yeah, let me respond to this if I could. Would you?
For years of U.S. companies going to Mexico, living free...
But they could do that without NAFTA.
But we can stop that without NAFTA, and we can stop that with a good NAFTA.
How do you stop that without NAFTA?
Just make... I'll pass a few simple laws on this. Just make it very, very clear.
Simple laws on Mexico?
No.
How do you stop it without NAFTA?
Give me your whole mind.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't heard the answer, but go ahead.
That's because you haven't quit talking.
Well, how do you stop it without NAFTA?
Okay. Are you going to listen? Work on it. Now, very simple. Just tell every company south of the border, if they operate that way, they cannot ship their goods into the U.S. at any price, period, and they will become choir boys overnight. See, Mexico is a country that can't buy anything.
Okay. I got to get... Come back, I want to respond to this.
And then we'll go to your phone calls on Larry King Live. We'll be right back. Okay, if we keep responding, we're never going to get some calls. But I'll have the Vice President respond on the Stefan Chemical, and then quickly the calls. Quick.
Oh, thank you. Well, if we defeat NAFTA, we'll lose all leverage over the enforcement of Mexico's environmental laws. With NAFTA,
Ross says we just passed the law to the...
Oh, that wouldn't affect Mexican companies or the investments from other countries, but the problem has been not so much their laws, but the enforcement of their laws. We probably can agree on that. This side agreement that we negotiated gives us the ability to use trade sanctions to compel the enforcement of their environmental laws.
Let me get some calls in.
Step forward.
By the way, I must tell our audience that we're keeping kind of score, so we're fair. We always try to be fair. And each party has had equal time right to this minute in talking. We go to Washington, D.C. as we begin phone calls. Hello.
Hello. My question is for Mr. Perot.
Yes.
How can the United States expect to compete on a long-term basis in an increasingly interdependent economic world while Europe and the PAC Rim nations unite through their own respective trade alignments?
Very simple. We got the most productive workforce in the world. We're the biggest buyer of goods and services in the world. We're the market everybody wants to sell to. Our problem is we do the world's dumbest trade agreements. You go back to the agreements we've done all over the world, you'd be amazed that adults did them. We're about to do another one, but the American people have stopped it, and it's dead in the House of Representatives. It's time we draw a line in the sand, and we've done it. Now, here's the key. You want to buy and sell with people who have money. You want to trade with partners who have money, but then you come to Mexico. It's an emerging nation. You want to help it. You put in, they raise the standard of living of their people, the tariff goes away. If anybody wants to do things like destroy people's lives by dumping and polluting the Rio Grande River and destroying the Tijuana beaches in San Diego and the life in San Diego pretty soon, you just say you can't ship your goods to the U.S. You can help Mexico and do it. No, you can't compete. Go put your primary effort with people who have money to spend. Then, because we want to help emerging nations, help nations like Mexico. But your primary effort has to be, and believe me, you say, does everybody want to do business with us more than anything else in the world? Because we buy a lot.
Please try to limit answers so we get a lot of calls in quickly.
Caller, could I?
Yeah.
Let me give you a quick example. Mattel just announced that if NAFTA is passed, it will move a plastics factory from Asia to Mexico. Instead of getting the plastic from China, it will get the plastic from the United States. With NAFTA, large that buy effectively with the rest of the world. That's why we're a little nervous about it. One of the trade officials in Japan described this as sneaky protectionism and raised a lot of questions about it. It will benefit us in our trading relationships with Asia and Europe, and we're right now in the middle of the negotiations with the GATT, that's the larger world trade agreement. If we pass NAFTA, we'll be able to use the leverage to drop the barriers against our products in other countries.
Fairview Heights, Illinois. Hello.
Hello, Larry. Vice President Gore, I understand the United States will spend $7 billion to clean up the pollution left by multinational companies in Mexico, much of it polluting our rivers. I would like to know why we're going to spend that money, and couldn't it be better spent here at home?
Well, Mexico will join in, so will the Inter-American Bank, and so will the polluters who have caused the problem. And we should clean up that pollution that Mr. Perot was talking about so eloquently earlier, whether we have NAFTA or not. With NAFTA, we will have the cooperation of Mexico and other countries in this hemisphere in doing that.
Aren't you... Yeah, sorry.
It will cost us several $billion in tariff losses. It will cost us at least $15 billion and probably more to build infrastructure. And we will have a $20 to $40 billion bill on pollution alone. Now, guess who's going to pay that? All you hard-working taxpayers that still have jobs, go look in the mirror. And ask yourselves why the government's policies have caused 4 out of 5 of you to have to lower your standard of living. Ask yourself why your government sent 2 million jobs to Asia alone, manufacturing jobs, in the 1980s. Now, you agree with that number?
All of that happened before NAFTA
2 million or
and
not?
Before we took
That's
office.
not the point. Is it a good number?
Oh, we've lost lousy trade deals in the...
We've made lousy...
I'll let you... Appreciate that. With NAFTA, all of the problems that Mr. Perot talks about will be made worse if NAFTA is defeated. We have an opportunity to make all of them better if we pass NAFTA. Listen, Larry, the whole world is poised, waiting for America's to Mexico's decision to say yes. We have knocked on their door for 20 years trying to get them to stop being protectionist.
Are you saying this embarrasses us if we...
Well, of course it does, but it's far more important than just embarrassment. It diminishes our ability, it would diminish our ability to open other markets overseas. The GATT round would probably not be completed if NAFTA were defeated.
I got an exact break here. We'll come right back. Half hour to go. We'll take your phone calls. Don't go away. The NAFTA debate on Larry King Line. Back to your phone calls for Vice President Al Gore and Ross Perot. Nanaimo, British Columbia. Hello.
Hi, it's Nanaimo. I'd like to know what Mr. The previous free trade agreement between Canada and the U.S.
Both learn. Ross?
Well, just by watching it, first thing, thousands of people joined in United We Stand America out of Canada. I couldn't figure out why, so I checked. They were mad at NAFTA. Then I watched the election. The Conservative Party had 155 seats and the Prime Minister. There's a message here for both political parties in the United States. After the dust cleared, they had 2 seats in Parliament, no Prime Minister.
NAFTA?
Reason, NAFTA. Why? Huge numbers of manufacturing jobs left Canada, came into the United States because of a 15% wage differential. We pay our workers less in Canada. Now, when you've got a 7-to-1 wage differential between the United States and Mexico, you will hear the giant sucking sound.
No,
there's a political lesson, there's a business lesson.
I'm going to have to limit the answers. So
Yeah, but this is an important question, and it's important to realize that only one of the parties in that election campaigned against the basic NAFTA treaty. That was the socialists. They lost seats. They only got 9 seats out of 258. And now the person who won has been talking with the President Clinton, good, and the United States. Result.
And there is a tooth fairy and there is an Easter bunny.
Bethesda, Maryland. Hello.
Good evening, Larry. I'd like to ask the Vice President specifically to answer in terms of a time limit. How many years? 5, 10 years will it be before we see these new jobs in America that are supposed to be out there?
Job swing, how long?
Well, we are already seeing a great many new jobs. We have seen 400,000 new jobs just in the last 5 years because of Mexico's unilateral decision to lower the barriers to U.S. products. We'll see 200,000 jobs, it is estimated, over the next several years in the wake of NAFTA. No. We think absolutely not.
Unions are wrong.
Oh, yes, I think they're wrong.
Trade unions are wrong about fearing a dip.
Absolutely. Some of them show very large job gains, but the computers in the United States will, we sell into Mexico, they have a 20% tariff on our computers, After NAFTA, they will have a 0% tariff on our computers, but the 20% will still apply to Asia and to Europe. So with the transportation advantage and a 20% price advantage, who are they going to buy their computers from? They're going to buy lots of them from us. Now that gives us an advantage, and when you sell more products, you make more products. When you make more products, you hire more people.
Quickly, if you believe that, I got a lot of stuff in the attic I can sell you. Second, if this is all true, why is corporate America downsizing? If this is all true, why do we have the largest number of college graduates this year unable to find jobs since at any time in the 40s? If this is all true, why is it that everywhere I go in a hotel, I've got a college graduate coming up to the room, bringing food, carrying bags, so on and so forth, waiting till they get their job? If this is all true, why isn't our economy booming? See, it just doesn't fit, folks. Just go look at reality.
I'd like to answer the question if I could. Because while we have a $5.6 billion trade surplus with Mexico, we have a $49 billion deficit with Japan, a $19 billion deficit with China, a $9 billion deficit with problems. If we use the opportunity, he talks, we don't accept the status quo. We want to fight for working is part of it.
Zagreb, Croatia. Hello.
Good evening. My question is this, Mr. Perot. If you obviously have many criticisms about the NAFTA agreement, can you give us specific answers as to an alternative to it? If you don't like it, tell us what really we should be doing.
Can you overview a treaty you would sign?
Yes, I will do it again. First, you've got to have a clear understanding with Mexico that we can only do business with a country that gives its people a decent standard of living and respects human rights, because we are all, life is precious.
That would be the first part of it.
Every human life is precious. If you don't treat your workers fairly, and if you don't treat your people fairly, history teaches us that that produces stress that will take maybe a century to cure. It's in Mexico's interest to do that. Then their workers will come up the economic scale. We'll put in a social tariff that drops as they bring their workers' pay and benefits up. If we pass NAFTA and we pass health care, and your competitor goes to Mexico, you will either have to go to Mexico or go out of business. I can give you a whole list of things
you would
like
have a tariff that's
the way we're set now. No, it's a social tariff. As they bring their people up, we drop the tariff. When it's head-to-head competition, their people have equal pay and benefits to ours.
Wrong with that?
There is no tariff, and we brains and wits, and off we go. That's good for Mexico, and it protects our people.
Why is that bad?
Well, it kind of goes back to the Smoot-Hawley idea, seriously. For this reason, the idea that we can isolate ourselves from the rest of the world and only do business with perfect countries that do everything the way we want them to do is pretty unrealistic. His proposal, as I understand it, is to raise tariffs and call it a social tariff and use that to keep products out from any country that doesn't meet our standards in all things.
Mexico.
Now, let me finish, please. Now, you take that kind of approach to Mexico and you defeat NAFTA, you've lost the partnership we've been building with Mexico for a generation and more. But beyond that, here's the central point. We have to realize that we unilaterally cannot change the entire world. We can't force every country in the world that we want to trade with to meet our standards in everything that we would like to see them meet. Now, the fundamental, the guts of this whole thing is, the reason why some people listen to what he's saying is that they think if a country has wages lower than we have, then it's fundamentally unfair to trade with them, even when it's totally even in all other respects. If that were the case, if low wages were the determinant of where you locate businesses, then Haiti would be an economic powerhouse. Bangladesh would be a powerhouse. We have problems, trade problems, with countries that have wages higher than we have, like Germany. And they have fewer barriers than wages because, Larry, the secret is productivity. Our working men and women are the most productive of any nation on the face of the earth. You give us the opportunity to sell our products unimpeded without these trade barriers that we've been having to deal with into these other countries, we'll knock the socks off the workers of any other country in this world.
Why doesn't that make sense to you?
Well, it wouldn't make sense to most people over 6 years old. Now, and if I have to explain it to the audience, they'd probably, I don't think I will. Bangladesh and Haiti, they all got that one. I won't waste your time on that one. You understand that?
No, they have the lowest wages.
That's not the point. Everybody out there understands why Bangladesh and Haiti are not like Mexico. So
tell me. I mean, humor me if you would.
No, I won't. I don't think I can. Now, next thing. Pretty simple stuff. We've been out-traded by everybody. All we've got to do is explain very nicely to Mexico that they out-traded us on this deal. We've got to make a fair deal with them. They'll huff and puff. We'll make a good deal for a very simple reason. They need us. We don't need them. Now then, we go to Japan, send a horse trader over to Japan, send somebody that knows how to negotiate, and just explain to them that these were the most one-sided trade deals in the world. We've got to reopen them. We've got to make them fair. And they'd say, what do you mean? I said, we'll just take the same deal we gave you. They would look at you like, good gracious sakes alive, you mean you want the same deal we've had for years? That's fair. Then you start to negotiate and say, well, a fallback position, we'll just take the deals that y'all made with Europe because they're a whole lot better than the ones you made with the U.S. You know what the problem is, folks? It's foreign lobbyists. They're wrecking this whole thing. Right here, Time magazine just says it all. It says, in spite of Clinton's protests, the influence peddling machine in Washington is back in high gear. The headline, Time magazine, a lobbyist paradise.
I'd like to respond to
We
that.
are being sold out by foreign lobbyists. We've got 33 of them working on this in the biggest lobbying effort in the history of our country to ram NAFTA down your throat.
I'd like to
The bad
respond.
news, the good news is, it ain't working.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to the others.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll get another call.
One of President Clinton's first acts in office was to put limits on the lobbyists and new ethics laws, and we're working for lobby law reform right now. But, you know, we had a little conversation about this earlier, but every dollar that's been spent has been publicly disclosed. We don't know yet. Tomorrow we'll but I say this, and I don't know of any single individual who lobbied the Congress than you did or people in your behalf did to get tax breaks for your companies. And it's legal.
Well, you're lying.
It's legal.
You're lying now.
You didn't lobby the Ways and Means Committee for tax breaks for yourself and your companies?
What do you have in mind? What are you talking about?
Well, it's been written about extensively, and again, there's nothing illegal about
Well,
it.
that's not the point. I mean, what are you talking about?
Lobbying the Congress.
Well, I mean,
know a lot
spell it
about
out.
it.
Spell it out.
You didn't lobby the Ways and Means Committee? You didn't have people lobbying the Ways and Means Committee for tax breaks?
What are you talking about?
In the 1970s.
Well, keep going.
Well, have you?
Well, did you or did you not? I mean, it's not...
Well, you're so general, I can't pin it down.
Yeah, but
I mean, 1970s.
No,
I'm not charging anything illegal,
No,
but
that's
this blunderbuss attack on all lobbying.
I think he did that. You made a statement about lobbying.
Wait just a minute. Let's talk about the lobbying reforms. That's the biggest sham in history. All you had to do was take a pledge. A pledge is like a pledge to quit drinking. We don't have lobbying reform under Clinton. We will get it, but we don't have it yet. And this stuff they've come up with is nothing. And if you look at who's running all these economic negotiations, it's a who's who of former foreign lobbyists now in the Clinton administration.
Okay. McLean, Virginia. Hello.
I'll say
Sir,
again.
this is for Mr. Perot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, over the past 5 years, and I think you probably know this, the U.S. has nearly tripled its electronics exports to Mexico, worth about $6 billion. Now, that's produced a lot of high-tech, good-paying jobs in America. Now, if Congress does the right thing and passes NAFTA and removes the tariffs on these products, how can you believe that this wouldn't increase our exports, create more jobs, create more exports for America?
Well, I think you're seeing, counted in that figure, every piece of electronics that goes to Mexico does a turnaround in an assembly plant and comes back to the United States. I am certain you're seeing all the radios that go down and get put in cars that come back to the United States. If we strip it down to the real electronics that the Mexican people buy that stay in Mexico, it'll be a fraction of that sum.
Did you see the Walmart that opened in Mexico City on the news?
Largest one in the...
Largest one in the world, if I understand it. They have 72 cash registers ringing constantly with people in that country, in Mexico, taking American products out of that store. We have this image of them being so poor that they can't possibly buy any electronic equipment or anything else that we make. They are poorer than we are. But you know what? They spend more per person on American products than any other country except Canada. Let me finish, because it's very important. Japan, if you take everything that Japan buys, only 2% of it comes from the United States. If you take everything that Mexico buys, it's 800% larger, and if you take what they buy from foreign countries, 70% of everything they buy from other countries comes from us. They prefer American products. If we lower those trade barriers and get rid of them altogether, we will have an export surge into Mexico, and we'll have a partnership with Mexico that will help us remove the trade barriers in the rest of the world.
Fairfax, Virginia, hello. I should bring it down. Fairfax, Virginia, with Vice President Al Gore and Ross Perot. Hello.
Companies can come into Mexico by, thousands and set up manufacturing of products using the cheap Mexican labor, and I think that is the biggest threat to the loss of U.S. jobs. Is this correct?
No, it's not correct, because American workers are more than 5 times more productive than their counterparts in Mexico, because they have better tools, they have better training, they have a better infrastructure. There are lots and lots of companies that moved down to Mexico and decided that they would rather move back to the United States. I've got a whole long list of them. General Motors is one of them that moved down while Mr. Perot was on the board. He may have voted against that, but they have, I don't know, but they have now started moving jobs back from Mexico back to the United States. Let me give you another example. Norm Cohen in Charlotte, North Carolina is in the textile business. 15 years ago, he tried to sell his products in Mexico. He had the price, he had the quality, he couldn't sell. Why not? He went and investigated. His Mexican counterparts got a little mail out from the Mexican government every month with a listing of all the foreign companies, including American companies, that wanted to sell in competition into Mexico. They were given an opportunity to put an X mark beside the name of any company they didn't want to compete with. He got some investors and opened up a company in Mexico. Now, NAFTA not only eliminates the taxes at the border, it eliminates practices like that X marks the spot. And if NAFTA passes, Norm Cohen has plans right now to shut that factory in Mexico down and move a...
Respond?
If I have to, first off,
you don't have to.
The whole textile thing is a joke. Talk to anybody in the textile business, and they will tell you if their competitors go to Mexico, they will have to go to Mexico. That the Mexicans have spent a fortune building textile plants and are building them now in Cuba, where labor is next to nothing. Next, the GM bringing back jobs into this country is a sham used in the union negotiation. Next, the U.S. worker is 5 times more productive than the Mexican worker. Big joke of the century. The Mexican worker is a good worker. He is an industrious worker. He quickly gets up to 70% is productive, and after 3 to 5 years is 90% is productive and only makes 1/7 as much. You cannot compete with that in the good old USA, particularly with our benefits, retirement, and so on. It's just that simple. Mexico, it's a tilted deck.
Mexico City, hello.
Hi. The subject has come up about the possibility of Japanese taking over if NAFTA doesn't go through. Yeah. I'm American. I've been living in Mexico City for many years. There are thousands of Japanese here. They are waiting. They are lurking. What are you people doing?
Let me answer that.
Hold on. What's the finish of it, ma'am? All right, I didn't hear the end of it.
She said, what are you doing? Why don't you wake up? Why don't you wake up?
I think this is
you go ahead and answer.
You go ahead.
I'd like to answer, but you go first.
Let him go ahead. He can have it. I'm going to, as long as I get a brief follow-on.
Okay. Well, I think the question was...
It'll only take a minute to kill this snake. Go ahead.
Go ahead, kill it.
Question, not me, right?
No, this question. Absolutely. Excuse me. All right, question.
Go ahead.
No,
it was for you.
Just as basic. There's a constant in the Clinton administration. Anytime they get cornered, they go into what I call the sky is falling routine. The presidency is at stake. The Japanese are coming.
Oh, the question
Next thing we'll have is the British are coming. You know, the ghosts are coming. Look, the Japanese cannot just wander into Mexico, do anything they want to do, dump across our border, unless we're stupid enough to let them. Now, if our foreign lobbyists stay wired in the way they are now, we'll probably say, ooh, this is wonderful. I can tell you about to our foreign lobbyists, I can tell you a deal that's buried in this agreement that gives a $17 million benefit to Honda. It's buried. I can show it to you in print. It's there big time. I can show you a deal
Benefits a
on
single company?
You bet. I can show you a deal on Tennessee whiskey that'll make you just wonder what the heck is going on. The sky is not falling. The Japanese are our friends.
Okay.
They're not a threat.
Let me respond. Both automobile manufacturers, including Honda in Marysville, Ohio, Nissan in Tennessee, Saturn in Tennessee, all of the companies in Detroit, they benefit because that Mexican tariff is brought down to zero. Every other American, Tennessee whiskey benefits every American business if they want to sell in Mexico. But hold on, because I want to. This is extremely important. President Salinas has a trade mission to Japan the month after the vote on NAFTA. If we don't take this deal, you can bet that Japan will try to take this deal. They'll be in there in a New York minute. Europe will try to get this deal. They are concerned about us taking this deal. Listen, Larry, we ought to thank our lucky stars that the Mexican people have had the vision and courage to strike out on the American path toward the ideas of Thomas Jefferson, toward democracy, toward free markets. And now they just want to know, can we take yes for an answer?
In the interest of time, Ross, are there things about this treaty you like?
Oh, sure, but here's the Honda deal.
Is there anything
Here
about
it is, folks, as they say, it's in the book. There's the Honda deal. Here is the Tennessee whiskey
Al, is there anything
deal.
about the deal you don't like?
Now, stay with me 1 second. Here is the deal on Tennessee whiskey. Only in the state of Tennessee. Authorized to produce only in the state of Tennessee. No. This is foreign lobbying big time. This is what's wrong with our country. This is what you and I will clear up through government reform.
That's protection of a brand name. That's protection of a brand name. One of the things about this treaty is it protects intellectual property.
Why just that brand name?
Well, it's not just that brand name. If you look at the line above it, it says bourbon whiskey. Right? That doesn't have, that's not a brand name.
And Tennessee whiskey.
And Tennessee
authorized to produce only in the state of Tennessee.
No, but that refers to the other one. It deals with all bourbon.
Caught in the middle of the act, folks.
I think bourbon is on.
No place to run, no place to hide. Okay.
Is there anything about...
Excuse me. Just so you're clear about that, those are brand names. And one of the things we've been trying to get in our trade dealings with other countries is protection for what's called intellectual property. And it's a good thing, too, because Mexicans now prefer U.S. brand name products. That's why they're going in and out of that Walmart so fast.
All right, there's a 6-month out if it's turned down, right?
Yeah. Now let's talk about that for a minute. If I'm wrong and he's right, then you give 6 months notice and you're out of it.
Ross, what's wrong with that?
Now here's the way we get out of it. If the House of Representatives lets this go through, the whole House of Representatives is running in 1994 and a third of the Senate. We got a little song we sang. We'll remember in November when we step into that little booth. If we have to, we the people, the owners of this country, we'll clean this mess up in Washington in 94.
Are you saying you will?
And we'll make sure that we put the 6-month tail on this thing in 1995. And if you think these guys will, you believe in the tooth fairy.
Well, Ross, are you saying that you're going to work against congressmen who vote for it?
I'm not. Our people are really angry about this. Working people all across the country, they are their job.
I'd like to say something.
We've got to have a climate in this country where we can create. That is one thing to do for us, and they're not.
Against any. It's a choice between things as who else scared. Not a nation that is afraid to compete in the world marketplace. And when we face a choice as important as this one, it is extremely important that we make the right decision. This is a fork in the road. The whole world is watching.
What's going to happen in 8 days?
I love the way these guys turn around on a dime. They've been out making speeches that everybody ought to get a depression check every time they get their eyes checked or their glasses checked, and the president's made a stream of speeches telling us how insecure we are. Now suddenly they figured out that we are a strong, proud people, and we are not going to let this trade agreement go through and create further damage to this great country. Let me make sure I say this before we go off the air tonight. I'll give you one reason that will just stick why we can't continue to do these agreements. If we keep shipping our manufacturing jobs across the border and around the world and deindustrializing our country, we will not be able to defend this great country, and that is a risk we will never take.
He started off as head of United We Stand. I'm afraid he's going to end up as head of Divided We Fall. Everything that he is worried about will get worse if NAFTA is defeated. We want jobs for America's working men and women. We want to get rid of the barriers that have prevented us from selling what we make in other countries. This is an historic opportunity to do that.
Thank you both for this historic evening. The vote in Congress is 8 days away. You'll be hearing lots more about it. Thanks to Ross Perot and Vice President Al Gore, for everyone here at Larry King Live, and for the superb staff that put this all together. The best in the business, and good night.